United Nations Climate Change Summit, acronym COP27, ongoing in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. According to the United Nations Climate Action Report, fossil fuels, coal, oil and gas are by far the largest contributors to global climate change, accounting for 75% of global greenhouse gas emissions and nearly 90% of all carbon dioxide emissions. As these greenhouse gas emissions continue to envelop the planet and trap the sun's heat, this unfortunately leads to global warming and climate change. According to its report, Africa suffers more, though it produces little gas emissions, with nations suffering from floods, earthquakes, famine, just to name this few. Who is really to be blamed for the impacts of climate change? We shall be attempting answers in today's edition of Voice It. Stay with us. Hello Africa and the world, thank you immensely for joining us once again over your Pan-African channel for UMedia Africa. Today we are talking COP27, of course, is ongoing in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, and world leaders from over 200 countries are coming together to discuss how they can save the planet. And joining me as guest this afternoon in the studio with us is Dr. Ekindi Mudingo, who is an environmentalist, a mangrove and wetland expert, as well as an invasive species analyst. To sum it all, he is a climate change expert. Good day to you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be in the studio to share all this aspect of climate change and the strategic level which they are discussing now in Egypt.
Thank you immensely for accepting our invitation. We shall equally be joined by Dr. Asong Michael Kuma, who is a member of the Rwandan Bar Association as well as a member of the East African Law Society. He shall be joining us all the way from Rwanda subsequently. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get down to discussion on today's topic on the table this afternoon, I would like you to first take a listen to this report compiled by the news desk of 4U Media Africa. Take a listen. At the first meeting of the Forest and Climate Leaders Partnership, close to 25 countries attending the COP27 climate conference that debuted on Monday in Egypt have launched a group to hold each other accountable for a pledge to end deforestation by 2030, announcing billions of dollars in additional financing for the efforts. The Leaders Partnership, chaired by the United States and Ghana, takes place a year after more than 140 leaders promised at COP26 to end deforestation by the end of the decade. According to records, the progress has been patchy since the last meeting, with only a few countries worldwide instituting more aggressive policies on deforestation and financing. A new group, which includes Japan, Pakistan, the United Kingdom and others, accounts for roughly 35% of the world's forest and aims to meet twice a year to track the progress. COP26, President Alok Sharma said in a statement, I quote, "This partnership is a critical next step to collectively deliver on this promise and help keep the goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius alive." Ladies and gentlemen, that was it for that report on deforestation with regards to COP27 that is taking place in Egypt. We're just getting indications that Dr. Asong Michael Kuma is with us this afternoon. Good day to you, sir. Dr. Asong, are you with us this afternoon?
Good afternoon.
You're welcome. You're welcome to today's edition.
Thank you.
Okay, we shall be coming back to you, sir. Subsequently, I would like to turn our first question to you, Dr. Ekindi. I would like to ask you, as COP27 is ongoing in Egypt, as we all know, it's supposed to run from the 6th to the 18th of November 2022. What is your evaluation of the global climate situation?
The global climate situation, it is drastic because once you go with respect to the evaluation that was conducted in 2002, about in May 2002, we realized that the amount of carbon dioxide and the other derivatives, they have doubled. So we normally we usually have between 180 to 200 ppm. Well, scientists will know about what I'm saying, but now we are already around 400. 400 means that what we are witnessing is just the consequences. But what we need to clarify here, it's that it's not that we are not going to have precipitation, we are not going to have temperature in a given area. It's just that there's a shift, right, in the actual time, which we previously know that we have rains and we have normal temperature, but now the shift is quite high, and it's only going to increase. And even the 1.5 degrees Celsius that they are talking to stay within that range by 2050 or 2030, it's not possible again. So they are thinking of increasing to at least 2 degrees, so that at least we can be able to control this action, because since then there are so many things to say about this aspect of climate change, and the possibilities which we have, there are many, but they are not reachable for Africa.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ekinde. Now to get to you, Dr. Asang, having listened to your co-panelist, Dr. Ekinde here, and having listened to the report that was played earlier on, what do you think are some of the causes of climate change across the globe?
Thank you, Sharon, for that question. As a matter of fact, they are multifactorial and stemming from the government, multinationals, individuals, wars, and lack of control for the different substances that actually pollute the environment and that lead to climate change. So as a matter of fact, it's a very, very difficult task, because as I earlier on said, we have several actors when it concerns climate change issues. And unless everybody takes its responsibility at hand, that is, first of all, being conscious of the fact that our environment is being destroyed, and that climate change is a danger to Africa and even to the world, considering the fact that due to climate change issues, we've had a lot of floods, we've had more desertations in Africa, we've had even outbreaks of diseases which are being linked to climate change, because when we have floods, automatically diseases like cholera will actually sprout up. And more to that, this actually impacts the whole society as a whole, because you have displacements, you have deaths, you have issues with malnutrition, and etc. So as a matter of fact, we have to look into all the different actors and to see the role they have to play. And it is only by doing that that we'll be able to reach out in resolving climate change issues. But as a matter of fact, there are so many actors to be blamed, as an earlier on said.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You did reiterate that it does bring about the prevalence of several diseases. Just to reiterate that you are a medical doctor. Now to proceed with you, Dr. Ekinde. Today we're discussing the impact of climate change, not just in Africa, but at the globe at large. And now as an environmentalist, what do you think are some of these impacts?
The impact, like Doctor just mentioned, they have cross-cutting effect, but like he mentioned, what we need to understand clearly is that it differs with respect to the site which you are. Those who usually witness high temperature, they will definitely also maybe have an association with high winds. You have droughts. He has just mentioned some of the few, but what I need to mention is that if you take in terms of livelihood, right, you have so many displaced people today because of this aspect of deficiency of water, shortage of electricity. People are moving, and the heats also are also causing fire and outbreaks of other diseases, like he did mention, the doctor did mention, because the issue is not only that you cannot move the fan, but you as an individual, there's this aspect of displacement. So people are losing their livelihood activities, and that aspect is very critical, because even the cattle, they find it difficult. If you go to the north, for example, you find it difficult. I'm saying North Cameroon, but if you go, for example, in Addis Ababa, you have that, you have more cattle, but
yes,
it depends on the aspect which you want to tackle. Because if those who are in the coast area, for example, those who are along the creeks, they also witness those type of climate effect, which we have inundation, or you have islands which are practically at the verge of disappearing. So it is cross-cutting and it is holistic in the sense that if we don't engage each and everyone, like Dr. Dis mentioned, the responsibility of each and every actor. But the problem here, it's first of all at the strategic level. What is the strategy which we are trying to put in place, and how do those who have contributed in a significant way help us to reduce this risk of health problem, the aspect of drought? Are we doing irrigation or restoration? So there are arenas which we must explore, but now we must be able to first of all change the perception of people with respect to this aspect of climate change as well, because there are two school of thoughts. Those who think that the climate is going to auto-regulate itself. Yes, some other things that, well, it is not going to happen. So, but all of us, in one way or the other, we are impacted either with high precipitation or with high temperature. So those two factors are being, there's a paradigm shift in those two factors, which are posing problems with respect to communities. And what I can mention is that the aspect of impact are very glaring today. Maybe if you take it even from the aspect of the Gambia, for example, you go there, you have mangroves which are having diebacks. You come down to Cameroon itself, around Manoka, you have an island which has practically disappeared. You go down to Equatorial Guinea and Gabon, you have floods. So basically, Africa is suffering depending on the side in which the countries are located. Those who are in the hinterlands, they have their own landslide. So basically, it is very complex. So we need a collective action for us to be able to reduce some of this impact.
Thank you immensely, Dr. Ekindi. Now let's proceed with you, Dr. Asang. Looking at the resolutions that were made at COP26 that took place last year in Glasgow. Now, what needs to be done in order to ensure that this year's COP27, which is ongoing in Egypt, is successful? And of course, all the measures or the resolutions that will be made are respected or implemented with regards to, because we all see the lingering effects or lingering impacts that climate change still has on the continent and the globe at large.
Well, thank you very much, Sharon. As a matter of fact, when it concerns climate change, there is an international convention, that is the Paris Agreement, that was being signed and ratified by about 196 countries in the world. That is in 2015. And I think its signature was being launched on, I think in 2016 in the US. So according to this agreement, there were several different strategies that had to be implemented to fight climate change. And as Dr. Ekindi earlier on said, the goal was actually to limit global warming to about 2 degrees, limit the increase, that it should not be above 2 degrees, while fighting to make sure that we could even go down to about 1.5 degrees. So more to that, we also have the strategy of national determined contributions. So in the light of this strategy, the aim was to have nations contribute in one way or the other to fight the different issues concerning climate change. And more to that, there had to be strategic plans with regards to technology, with regards to educating the population, with regards to encouraging people to be more responsible and to be more conscious about the problems of climate change. But now, when we look at the different facts that are being gotten from different countries in the world and on a global note, we realized that one of the goals that had to be met was that participation from different nations, especially the developed nations, had to be at about $2 trillion every year to be able to counteract the effects of climate change, to be able to assist countries that are being impacted by climate change. For example, you realize that in Africa, there has been a lot of disasters that have taken place, and so many have lost their lives. Whereas Africa does not even contribute to up to 4% of greenhouse gases and global warming on a general note. So this strategy was being put in place so that they should achieve this goal so that they can assist these countries. But as from last year and I think previous years, only about 100 billion has been contributed by these developed countries to assist countries that have been impacted by climate change. I forgot to mention also that in the Middle East, there are so many countries that are also being impacted by climate change, like Pakistan, like India, for example. So this year, the main goal this year was to see how they could actually respect and implement the different dispositions of the Paris Agreement of 2015, which of course is a very great task. It's a very complicated one because, as I earlier on said, there are so many actors when it concerns climate change. And unless these actors are being brought to the table and made to recognize their responsibilities, they will not be able to participate. We also have to know that in most of our African countries or in the world, there is an issue even with what we call the corporate social responsibility. So it's all about companies being able to assist the society for the harm that they cause to the society. But when we look at our environmental laws or our legislations, you realize that there is no precise law encouraging and imposing companies to assist in global warming issues. So it becomes then very, very difficult. Like, for example, in Cameroon, you will see that our environmental law dates from 1996. And we already have a Paris Agreement of 2015, so it's somehow obsolete. And when it concerns contributions that are supposed to be given to the National Fund for Environment and Durable Development, we realize that there is no imposition for companies to participate in protecting our environment. So, of course, this will make things difficult because majority of those who pollute the environment are these companies. We also have multi-billionaires who actually invest a lot of money in companies that actually increase global warming in the world. And it has been said that billionaires alone contribute 1,000 more times in polluting the environment than any other individual. So I think that these are all the things that have to be seen or looked at this COP27 so that they should be able to define better strategies to be able to hold individuals responsible, that is from the government to corporate bodies, and also to educate the people so that they should be conscious of these changes. Because as our Lauren said, all these actors have a role to play, even though their roles are different with regards to the type of pollution which they bring to the environment.
Every actor does have a role to play when it comes to resolving or bringing down the impacts of climate change. Now, having listened to your co-panelist, Dr. Asung, sir, looking at climate finance now, we at the opening of COP27, the leaders or delegates from over 200 countries agreed that richer countries were going to assist or compensate poorer nations so that those that are more vulnerable to climate change, so that they can be able to better manage the impacts of climate change. Now, do you really think that this agreement that has been made there in Egypt is actually feasible, is actually going to come to pass?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hassan. Thank you, Sharon. The fact is, we need to understand two things here first before we get into that finance thing, because in terms of strategy here, we need to understand that there is what we know about mitigation and we know about adaptation, right? So we have to separate that, because there are two arms which comes within the COP issue, but there are other things which are being discussed under mitigation or under adaptation, which concerns, for example, agriculture and all the other things. The clear thing is that maybe I want to look at it at this aspect, that the health crisis that we had did impact the contribution of these respective actors. Because one of the problems with the Paris Accord is that this Paris Accord, it's like a 26-page document with some articles which are very clear. But the problem there is, how can we make that strategic document be a binding document? That's the first problem with that document. The problem is that, yes, Doctor, I totally agree with you that they should clarify the roles and responsibility, but the problem is that if the roles and responsibility at the strategic level are not clear or are not legally binding, you yourself, you know that if they are not legally binding, there is no need for those who are billionaires to come and sit and dialogue with the whole story. So there is that first problem which the Paris Accord needs to clarify, and once it is clarified, let the money which was voted be put into the account, and now the possible mechanism for financing of all these things. For Cameroon, for example, they have already listed what they want to do as mitigation and adaptation, and globally what they are expecting, if they had it, maybe some of the aspect which Doctor talked about, sensitization, increasing, maybe using LED light and all those things, maybe with the sectorials we'll have that money come in, and that's just one of the aspects. We don't know whether each country is determined to get to that level, but I love what he mentioned about the national determination contribution of each country. Each country is making communication yearly on that aspect, on which is my target. So upon that target, now those who have to put money in that basket fund or the green fund should put the money so that it is distributed a little bit. I would just be cautioned a little bit to say that what I expect from the Paris, from the Sharm el-Sheikh COP, it's that let it be legally binding. Yes, Paris, Glasgow has set the pace, but it is still to get to full gear for full implementation, so that those who are at the macro level, at the micro level, should feel the impact that effectively this money is coming for me to control my action, because the level of poverty will not stop. I would just put it, will not stop this aspect of clearing the forests, and poor urbanization will not stop. So, but we need that type of accompaniment, but that type of follow-up and support from these potential polluters, so that we can be able to reduce some of the internally displaced persons which are from climate change. I look mostly at the community, because all what we are saying here, it's if those are at that field ground level, they are not
at the grassroots level, can be able to feel that they're actually working in their favor.
Exactly.
That was a very powerful input there. Just a reminder, sir, Dr. Hassan, you're a legal expert. Now let's discuss climate justice. How can we bring about, how can all the actors involved in this COP27 climate change bring about climate justice?
Yeah, Sharon, thank you for the question, and I want to also say thank you for Dr. Ekindi's intervention, because as he earlier on said, the issue with laws is that they should be able to be legally binding to the different parties. And when an international convention does not have that force, that binding force, automatically it's said to almost be useless. And if this convention cannot be respected or implemented in different states, then automatically we will not be able to talk about climate justice, you see. And it will also hinder cooperation between states, because the goal of the Paris Accord or Agreement of 2015 is to combat global warming, and also to bring in all the states to work hand in hand in cooperation to be able to fight climate change. So fighting climate change is not something that can be carried out by an individual on its own. It needs to be carried out with the participation of all the states in the world, because each and every person has a role to play. And we will realize that, unfortunately, as in the case of Africa and other countries in the Middle East, who contribute almost nothing to this pollution, they are those who are most impacted by climate change. So when we look at all of this, we realize that the only way to come to justice, climate justice, is first of all making sure that this Paris Agreement is first of all being accepted by everybody and implemented in our different nations. And when we talk about implementation of the Paris Agreement, we talk about domestication. For example, I said that the law we have in Cameroon on the environment dates since 1996. So if we want to compare it to the Paris Agreement, which was being delivered in 2015, we simply realize that it is obsolete. So this Paris Agreement will have to be domesticated, and then also we need to revise our environmental law so that it should be able to incorporate some of these dispositions of the Paris Agreement. And by that way, we'll be able to carry out the different strategies that will be aimed at protecting our environment by, first of all, implementing everybody, educating, and establishing responsibilities. I think another problem that hinders climate justice is that our different governments are most of the time corrupt. And because they are corrupt, some of these individuals or companies who actually violate climate regulations or environmental regulations actually go scot-free. And that is another issue, because we need government institutions that will be fair and just to be able to carry out their responsibilities perfectly well, and to hold responsible all these individuals who actually cause damage to the environment. More to that, even if we are able to put in place these laws, we have to make sure that they are respected. So that is another thing. Then finally, we also have to incorporate corporate social responsibility to our different environmental laws. It therefore means that our different corporate bodies, especially those who are involved in the industrial and manufacturing companies, which actually pollute the atmosphere in one way or the other, they have to be held responsible, and they have to also participate in protecting their environment. Last but not the least, standards must be set up. As Dr. Ekindji earlier on said, there are certain standards when it concerns the amount of carbon dioxide or methane that is supposed to be in the atmosphere. And the government has to take all appropriate measures to be able to measure all these different toxic substances, gaseous, that they should respect the norms. Without that, we'll not be able to have climate justice. So I think it's just a matter of us taking our responsibilities into our hands and do what is necessary to save the planet.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asong. Dr. Ekindji, you say you want to add up something?
Yes, I want to just insist on the fact that the COP, what is clear there, it's accountability and transparency. So in that aspect of accountability and transparency, I think that's why Dr. Asong is insisting on that aspect of domestication, because I would not like to venture into constitutional things or laws and policies, but what I want to mention here is that Cameroon, for example, Cameroon is a specific case because I know it so well, and the aspect of when you talked about financing maybe a mitigation action or adaptation action. Cameroon has worked towards that, right? They are setting strategic document which has been put in place. But now I understand the problem of the environmental law, right? But I think there are other sub issues which complement. For example, those who are polluting. The problem here may be in the context of Cameroon enforcing the implementation of this monitoring aspect, because that's one of the things which is also lacking. We have these good policies, we have the law which may be obsolete, right? Needs to integrate certain aspects of carbons and the norms, and the Ministry of Environment has tried in its own part, right, to do certain things. I think maybe all the governments in Africa, the institution that we have, they are working independently. But I think, like, what I need to mention is that there needs to be a harmonization of policies in such a way that what it's happening in Nigeria, we should not be waiting
experiencing it in
exactly
Cameroon and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's just one that I wanted to add.
That's a very incredible input. Just to ask, we have this perception that Africa has it's an endowed continent. It's filled with natural resources. It's filled with vast vegetation and so on. But then we have leaders that are pledging that they are going to end deforestation by 2030. But yet we still have the issue of cutting down of trees and so on across the African continent and beyond. Now, do you think that this pledge or these agreements to end deforestation by 2030 is actually feasible on the African continent?
It's not feasible.
Explain.
It's not, because the perception of people about the perception of people is already a hindrance. The aspect of poverty is already a hindrance. So those two factors cannot permit we to curtail. If I remember 10 years back, we're saying that we're going to reduce deforestation. We have done sustainable management, but up till now, it's because some of the Congo Basin country, they have a lot of wood, they have a lot of research resources, mostly natural. That's why they are just vandalizing. I will use the word vandalizing because some of those whom Dr. Asson mentioned, they are involved in this illegal logging. But we thank God for the law which the European Union has put in place in terms of certifying logging wood. But the problem of certifying logging wood is that they have solved the problem partly. The other part is that those who are the poor people, for example, if you take the case of the Niger Delta, almost 80% of the wood that is harvested is from the mangrove area, and part of it goes to Nigeria, part of it comes to Cameroon. So all those who are in the coastal area, practically they're harvesting. So are they aware that it takes almost a century for a tree to reach a diameter of 100 centimeters? They are not aware. And it takes time to plant one tree, because to plant one tree, for it to grow up to that level, it's a lot of money. So the aspect of curtailing or reducing illegal logging, it's possible, but it needs, I will not put it iron hands to do that, but we need to also look at the aspect of which maybe restoration and putting some of this area into protected area, removing them from the management of the state and giving it to communities can be another way of controlling this illegal logging. But it's very, very difficult because people need food on their table, and the rate at which it is going, the corrupt nature of certain states makes it that when land grabbing comes, people are always forced to go to these areas which they think that it's these paper tigers cannot come. So they will deforest, and the government and the institution, like for example in the forestry sector or the environmental sector, they are ill-equipped with people to do the surveillance or the monitoring. So it is so many. There are many folds which we need to tackle, like Dr. Asson mentioned. If we don't come on a common table, on a common platform, we bring those who are I will not say illiterate, but those who don't understand anything about sustainable management, to explain to them, and those who have the powers to sign documents, those who have the financial power, and those who have the marketing power, and those we should put the law. So all of us have to come to a table to discuss about anything. But I am putting it clearly, it starts from the political aspect, the political will. If the will is there, then the other aspect can follow. But it needs a clear collaboration and a participation which involves every sectorial ministry because what we are talking about climate change is it's not that you import old vehicles that are obsolete, then some people are logging the trees in the forest. So basically we know that carbon from the environment or the biodiversity it's a part of it that can help to mitigate, but people are poor and they will still continue to log. So it is very challenging to meet the aspect of net deforestation.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, you're on to Voice It over your Pan-African channel for you Media Africa, and today we're discussing climate change COP27. Of course, now there is this question of the system of governance, the link between it and the impact of climate change. Now, Dr. Asong, as a legal expert, do you think there is a link between the two?
Of course, there is a link between the governance and every aspect of life. It's just like the law. The law governs everything, every different activity in the society. So when it concerns environmental issues, of course, we know everything starts from governance. And governance is all about organizing and putting in place strategies, policies, which will be able to achieve a particular goal. And what is the goal that we want to achieve here? As Aileron said, the goal we want to achieve here is that we want to limit global warming, and that we want to create an environment where organisms, human beings can interact in a perfect way and be able to grow without any interference and without any issues on each other. So automatically governance will have a very, very great role to play here, because it's through the government policies or the policies that are being implemented, because governance does not only have to do with the state, we also have corporate body governance, which will have to do with companies and their leaders that will have to put in place policies that are going to respect the different standards which are being set by the international community. But normally it's going to start first of all with the government, because everything emanates from the government, which has a vision to direct the country or the state in a particular way. And as concerns the environment, the government will have to not only implement its own personal objectives, but will also have to look at the objectives that have been set by the international community. As Ariane said, we have the Paris Agreement, and there are several other agreements, but the Paris seems to be the most famous amongst them. So through this, the government will actually make sure that first of all, there is legislation that is going to protect the environment, and more to that, they are going to impose this legislation on the different companies, on individuals, so that together we'll be able to protect the environment and limit global warming. So that is the link between global climate change and governance. They can't go without each other, and if we really want to make sure that our environment and the climate is protected, then automatically we need good governance. But unfortunately, in our societies today, we realize that bad governance is the order of the day, especially in Africa. So automatically that makes things more difficult when it regards to protecting the climate. But nevertheless, I think that it's all about recognizing our difficulties, recognizing our issues, and from there we'll be able to pick up and create a governance system that will be able to protect all these rights and make sure that we are able to keep our environment safe and the world safe.
Thank you immensely, Dr. Asong. Now we've been asking the question today, who is really to be blamed for this climate change impact that has befell the world? Now that's a question I would like to ask you now. Who is really to
Sharon, the blame factor has always been something which it's responsibility shared. I will not say that we are not to be blamed. All of us are to be blamed,
Exactly.
right? But if you put it in the context of the global warming, Africa is not to be blamed, for example. But Africa has to be blamed because those who issued, who brought those who are logging wood in Africa, who are exploiting fuel and carbon, all those things.
Yeah, they are found on the continent.
Yeah, so the blame factor here, it's equally shared. I'll just put it like that. But moreover, like Doctor just mentioned, Axel mentioned, for me, I think all relies on our willingness to embrace the environment today, because the problem is, let us set the policies, let us set the legislation, let us work together, and let's see how there is need for a little bit of sacrifice from each and every one. So that's how I look at it, because if we don't love our environment, if we don't love what we are doing, we cannot step on, and we have to kill the aspect of greed, because it's greed which is making it not to work. So those who are greedy enough, we are going to blame them.
Exactly. But we just have to say that each and every person does have a role to play when it comes to targeting or fighting this impact which is affecting the globe. Now over to you, Dr. Asong. We are gradually coming to the end of today's edition, but I'd like to ask you, we know that leaders from different African countries and the world at large are at the forefront when it comes to talking matters regarding climate change. If you had to give a message to them, especially African leaders, what would that be?
Sharon, that's a tough one. Well, the message I'll have to give to them is, first of all, implementing, respecting the rule of law, because that everything starts from there. We know that in Africa, our leaders are always first in complaining, but most of the time they don't take the appropriate actions to be able to combat the difficulties which we face every day. So automatically, I strongly believe, and my advice to our African leaders is, first of all, good governance. So everything will start with good governance. Then more to that, we also have this issue of debts, because as it was being discussed in one of the meetings at the COP27, some of the countries who had to participate or contribute to the disasters in the different parts of the world, like these countries owe us, and would this not be some sort of compensation for what they already owe us? So it becomes then difficult to resolve these issues, because most of our African countries are in a lot of debts due to mismanagement and bad governance. So to actually stand before those who are responsible, like the developed countries and all the different companies that are being involved in polluting the environment, we ourselves, we have to come with clean hands. Because if we come with debts in our hands, if we come with bad governance, if we come with dictatorship, when we bring all those things on the table, you see, we cannot really make our case before them, because they'll be like, okay, you're complaining about this, but look at this other thing that you are doing. So at the end of the day, it becomes very difficult. So our African leaders should make sure that they govern well, and by governing well, they will be able to defend our interests before the international community and do it perfectly well. Because it's all about fairness, it's all about justice, and those who seek justice must come with clean hands.
That's a very powerful message there. Those who seek justice must come with clean hands. Having listened to what Dr. Asong have said, sir, to wrap up with you, you're an environmentalist, you're a climate change expert, and we know that the climate actors do have a very important role to play. Now, passing across a message as someone who is in the field and someone who understands what's around, what will your message be to Africa as a whole? Because we are suffering a lot when it comes to the impact of climate change.
Like, I would just like to put it simple, is that the blame and the responsibilities are shared from different perspectives. But what I want to just mention is that we should start, each and everyone on his own arena, on his own niche, on his own environment, should start by doing something which, for example, simple basic things, which is like not putting on your outside light. It's just we start by minimizing our own impact on this aspect of electricity production. We can be doing planting of trees. But the simple thing is, if the policies that I've mentioned, like Doctor mentioned, if the governance is not clear, if it's weak, even if I do my own little effort, it will not have an impact on the global aspect, because today we are talking about Africa and the world. So the aspect is that we have to come to a common understanding that it is urgent. It is quite urgent that we work towards abating, maybe at the aspect of Africa, to support the world, because I think with the Congo Basin forest today, which is practically the first compared to the Amazonian basin, I think we have to start reducing our own impact by not logging too much. We start contributing to that, but practically it is quite challenging if all of us would don't have the same understanding of where we are going.
I'm tempted to ask you this question. Now we are at a point where we already know that Africa is suffering the impacts. We are at a point where we cannot longer deny that there are impacts with regards to climate change. What is the way out?
The way out is to embark on this, like I just mentioned. I talked about adaptation, because today we need to adapt in the context which will stop improper urbanization. For example, in the littoral region, you should stop all those things. For me, I just look at it as a simple perspective in that we are the local arm of the government should start implementing what is being written in the text, because that's another problem, because we see things happening and we don't understand. So basically, to curtail climate change at our own level, it is still challenging. I'm saying putting it because the aspect of perception, people are poor. So if you elevate people, when people are they see the change in their income, definitely I think they will abide in the aspect of environmental protection, because for now we are still far-fetched with respect to that. Okay.
Dr. Asong, a few words before we cut parts.
Yeah, I just want to let everyone know that climate change is a serious issue, and that we all have a responsibility in protecting our environment. And it's not only a tax that is being attributed to the government or to companies, but each and every one of us, we have a role to play, and we have to protect our planet. Thank you.
Thank you immensely, Dr. Asong. Just to reiterate, you're a member of the Rwandan Bar Association and a member of the East African Law Society, as well as a medical doctor here in Cameroon. We equally had Dr. Ekindi Mudingo, who of course is an environmentalist, a mangrove and wetland expert, as well as an invasive species analyst. To sum it all, as I earlier said, he is a climate change expert. Thank you immensely, sir.
Thank you, Sharon. It's a pleasure. We are always ready to come and contribute our own little quarter to make sure that the environment and the world meets the needs which the next generation will have to rely on.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of today's edition of Voice Seat over your Pan-African channel for You Media Africa. I have been Jix Nagbise for presentation. Today we were discussing COP27, the impact climate change does have on the continent and the globe at large, and seeing who was really to be blamed for this impact. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe you learned a lot from today's edition. Stay tuned. More programs will be coming up on For You Television Africa. Bye-bye.